Okay, welcome everyone. We're so glad you're here with us today. Welcome to the Solve Climate 2030 International Conference. We're so happy to be hosting it here at Vanderbilt University. How this is going to go today is we're going to have a short introductory video produced by Bard College to kind of set the stage for what we're here to talk about today. Then I'm going to introduce the panel after the video, and then we'll get started. So I'm going to show the video now.
Welcome to the Solve Climate Global Dialogues. You're participating in one of 125 events held across the planet, including in almost all 50 US states, part of a global project called Solve Climate by 2030. My name is Eben Goodstein, and I'm an economist and director of the graduate programs in sustainability at Bard College in New York, the lead organizer for Solve Climate. This last year has been difficult for everyone. As the world looks forward to recovery from COVID, we are focusing tonight on the most important question facing humanity. What can we do in this year in our regions to help solve climate change while supporting struggling communities that have faced widespread loss of life, economic disaster, and joblessness? Worldwide, from Australia to Kyrgyzstan, from Colombia to Malaysia, and from South Carolina to South Africa, Solve Climate audiences are hearing from local experts and young leaders about concrete steps that can really help nations solve climate change while creating much needed jobs and incomes for everybody. The year 2020 was one of the two hottest years in human history, bringing with it massive forest and grassland fires, record-breaking storms and hurricanes, and relentless rising seas. Solving climate is the challenge which the human species must now face. There's hope for the future. Solutions have continued to advance. This year, China committed to building a carbon neutral economy while the US rejoined the Paris Agreement. Solar, wind, and battery prices continue to fall while major car companies have been rushing to electrify the global fleet. Worldwide, movements for Black Lives Matter and Me Too are leading in bringing much delayed and urgently needed justice to the world. Time is short. We have until 2030. 10 years to solve climate. We can get a lot done in this decade. We have the solutions, but only if we focus the world on climate solutions and justice, and then do the work we have to do in our own cities and regions. For students listening, you are the leaders. Without you, the future we envision will not come. I'm asking tonight for your help. We're going to discover powerful ideas for climate solutions and climate justice and how you can be a part of the solution. But this message must reach beyond those of us who are listening right now. Would you ask all your teachers this week in every subject to make climate a class? The teacher can assign tonight's webinars homework for the students, and then afterwards have a one-class period discussion. And we mean every subject, from art to engineering, psychology to business, dance to chemistry. Teachers don't need to be a climate expert to lead a discussion about climate change. The Solve Climate project has easy-to-use teachers' guides in nearly every subject and in 3 languages to help teachers make climate relevant to their class. It only takes courage. Don't take no for an answer. Ask them, why not? This is your future. You'll be surprised how many teachers will say yes and thank you. Imagine you, thousands of leaders like you around the world asking their teachers once every school term to make climate a class. That means every term going forwards, hundreds of thousands, millions of students worldwide in their classes talking about climate solutions. COVID has shown how fragile our global economy and society are to extreme events. It's also shown that vulnerable people are facing the hardest, most damaging impacts. This is also true with climate change. Science has made it clear that unchecked global warming will mean an unending onslaught of extreme events, causing untold suffering for humanity and all creatures, species driven to extinction, a planet of environmental refugees. And yet, in many ways, this is the most exciting time to ever be alive as a human. We have the tools and networks and technologies to rewire the world with clean energy, reimagine the global food system, reinvent transportation, and regenerate forests and grasslands and be well on our way to solving climate by 2030. Tonight, we will learn how to do this in our own cities, our own towns, our own regions. Thank you for the work you will do to promote climate solutions and a just world.
Okay, thank you. Were you all able to see the video? Thumbs up? Okay, great. So I'm so thrilled to introduce this panel we have today. We have a great panel showcasing climate solutions in Tennessee. So first, we're going to hear from Eric Kopstain. He is the Vice Chancellor of Administration at Vanderbilt University. And I'm so proud to say Vanderbilt's really been a leader in sustainability in the city and the state. And Eric is going to share some of those initiatives with you all. Next, we'll hear from John Fenderson, who is currently serving as part-time consultant managing partner with Hatchie River Company. He has in the past served as a specialty asset manager at US Trust, which is a subsidiary of Bank of America. And previously to that, he was the senior manager of forestry at the National Wildlife Federation, and also the Southeast Regional Director for the National Network of Forest Practitioners. So John has experience in forestry as well as the financial products. Then we have Oscar Fox, and I'm really excited about our youth leaders here today. Oscar is the student body president at the University School of Nashville. But prior to that, he's been a climate leader, I think his whole life, which has been short so far. But he also is the youth leader of the National Mayor's Council on Sustainability. And then last, but definitely not least, we have Nia and Naomi Gross, excuse me, who are our youth climate leaders with Imani Montessori. And they're gonna share with you all some solutions that they have come up with that kids can do, and really adults and families can do to really have an impact in our homes and our communities. So thank you all so much. And Eric, I would love to start with you, and you kind of share what Vanderbilt's done in this space.
Will do. Thank you very much, Carol. Let me just share my screen here. Are you able to see that? Great. Well, thank you for the introduction again, Carol, and what an honor to be here today as a member of this panel with such great colleagues, and also my thanks to all of you who are in attendance. So I have a lot to cover in a short time about Vanderbilt's sustainability efforts, so here we go. We created at Vanderbilt a campus master plan called Future VU back in 2014, and from the onset, we wanted to establish for our campus really what is true north, and that was achieved via a set of guiding principles. You can see here that sustainability as a core objective for the Vanderbilt campus has been embedded in our thinking about the future from the very beginning. This slide is a brief overview of many, but not all, of the major steps Vanderbilt has taken this century that have contributed to moving the institution towards greater sustainability. For example, we started publishing greenhouse gas annual inventories as early as 2008. We established earth-friendly move-in days in 2010. We got rid of our coal plant in 2014. And again, we finalized our Future VU land use plan that emphasized sustainability as a core objective. So setting goals is really important. It gives an institution something to strive to achieve and something that can be measured and reported out to the community. So Vanderbilt has announced some bold goals: carbon neutrality by 2050 and zero waste by 2030, both of which I'll talk more about in subsequent slides. And so we immediately pivoted to, with these goals in mind, how do we get there? And one way is through a recently announced large-scale renewable energy partnership between Vanderbilt, TVA, and NES that will create large-scale solar installations in Tennessee to provide 100% of Vanderbilt's electrical consumption from green energy. So this effort is going to eliminate 25% of Vanderbilt's greenhouse gas footprint by 2023, and is a major step forward, not just for Vanderbilt, but for the entire region, as the Green Invest program was designed not only to meet Vanderbilt's needs, but to be scalable and available for other organizations across the TVA region. So I mentioned our zero waste goal, which focuses on reducing waste generation by 30% from 2017 levels by 2030, and achieving a 90% diversion rate from landfill by 2030. We made significant progress on these goals in the last year. We've installed 20 big belly solar trash compactors on campus. We achieved a 64.8% waste diversion percentage. 136 tons of food waste was composted. We have 8 food waste collection sites on campus and 167 and growing hydration stations. So also in 2020, Vanderbilt announced the elimination of single-use plastics, which was really the result of a collaborative effort involving student organizations and myself and members of my team. So these efforts are going to save more than 430,000 plastic bottles per year, which translates to over 1.7 million bottles during a graduating class's 4-year experience. Or said differently, the amount of plastic saved in 1 year through these efforts is enough to cover the university's football field about 1.5 times. So our Vanderbilt sustainability efforts, they also extend deeply into our campus dining program, where we've implemented menu management and waste tracking tools, portion controls, the Monterey Bay seafood watch list standards for our seafood, and we're serving less red meat. So our future VU framework calls also for an overarching campus-wide target of 50% green space, 25% hardscape, and 25% building footprint. The current campus breakdown is shown on the right, and you can see we have more progress to make. And as development continues on campus, we'll move towards our target. And once again, this is an example of goals against which we can track our progress and report back to the community. Here's a quick example of a neighborhood we transformed by reclaiming roadways and parking lots to create green community spaces and walkways that are accessible and pedestrian and bike centric. This neighborhood before this effort was, I believe, the least attractive part of campus, and now it's vastly improved, and it's a place whose character reflects the values of our institution. Our plans utilize a campus-wide approach as well as stormwater management by implementing a range of green infrastructure and low-impact development practices, including bioretention areas, in order to achieve our stormwater goals. And this is one on the building front. I am super proud that Vanderbilt was recently honored with a 2020 Leadership Award from the U.S. Green Building Council for achievements in green building and our commitment to creating a healthy, sustainable environment. This graphic kind of highlights our green buildings. We have 22 LEED certified buildings on campus. We have 1 building designed to achieve WELL certification, 1 building designed to achieve Living Building Challenge PETAL certification. And I'm really excited by our future prospects on buildings as well. We have many capital projects underway and in planning, and we intend to go much further on ensuring we deliver a very high quality and sustainable built environment at Vanderbilt. We also have a transportation and mobility plan called Move VU, with the goal of shifting the mode share and reducing the drive-alone rate to campus from 76.5% to 55% by 2025. And to do this, we'll enhance and promote sustainable commute options and will incentivize commuters to change their behaviors. And you can see on the right, Move VU outlines what we call a mobility hierarchy, where walking, biking, and transit are prioritized over the personal car. Okay, so, yeah, here we go. It is critical to keep the community really involved and engaged with our activities. This graphic here shows some of our multi-pronged approach that we use to reach our community and get their feedback. We use Instagram, websites, events, newsletters, internships, Twitter, and more to get the word out and to encourage, really encourage community participation in all of our efforts. And then we also have to build trust and teamwork across our community on sustainability efforts. And a key way to do that is through transparency and accountability. I mentioned earlier that each year we prepare an annual report on greenhouse gas inventory. And we also prepare an annual report to the community about progress we've made towards each of the goals that I've been talking about. Now, that said, we are proud of our accomplishments on the sustainability front at Vanderbilt, but we are not satisfied. We like our 2050 carbon neutrality goal. However, we and our community really want us to move faster. This is urgent. And I assure you, we are actively exploring ways to reach our targets more quickly, and there will be much more to come from Vanderbilt. So with that, I conclude my remarks and thank you.
Eric, thank you so much for that presentation. And we'll have time for questions at the end of the panel discussion. So next, Mr. John Fenderson, will you share with us what you have to share about forestry products for Tennessee? You're muted. I think you're muted.
Yeah, let me unmute first. That's I think that's part of the battle. So today, what I'm going to be talking about is primarily the way that carbon sequestration can be a tool to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is going to be basically a thumbnail sketch. Can you see my screen okay? All right, good deal. So this is just the basics of carbon sequestration as it relates to trees and terrestrial carbon. According to the Department of Energy, carbon sequestration refers to the provision of long-term storage of carbon in the terrestrial biosphere, underground, or the oceans, so that the buildup of carbon dioxide, principal greenhouse gas that we're all concerned about, concentration in the atmosphere, will reduce or slow. So there's a rate of change. So it's like you're going down the road and that's your speed, and then you hit the gas pedal, and that's acceleration. And ironically enough, with the car example, cars are and other things are responsible for a lot of the acceleration in greenhouse gases. So what we want to do is, as was shown in the previous presentation, we want to slow the rate of change or the increase, get a handle on it, and then we can move forward. So it's going to take steps, and there's going to be a basket of solutions. Forestry and trees are one of those solutions. So this would be the second in what you can do as a community, as an individual, as a state, as a nation, to reduce the rate of increase and get a handle on this by, well, in the next 9 years, and by 2050, most certainly. Or else we're going to have some really, really bad things to contend with. So, forest in the carbon cycle. Carbon is constantly cycled through oceans, atmosphere, and the biosphere. Forest and ag lands are an important carbon sink. You've probably heard about planting more trees. Well, that's one of the things in the basket of solutions that can get us out of this crazy direction that we're going in. Establishing new forests and active management can increase the terrestrial carbon sink. What do we mean about carbon sink? The yellow lines in this diagram represent carbon sink. It's where carbon is stored. The red arrows represent emissions. That's carbon going off to the atmosphere. And that's what we're trying to slow. We're trying to slow the rate of increase in the red arrows. The tree is in the center of the diagram, and that represents one individual way of sequestering carbon through the tops and photosynthesis. The trees pull carbon out of the atmosphere. You see this part of the diagram in peat bogs also sequester through their biological activity, also sequester carbon. They also give off methane and CO2, carbon dioxide. So that is less of a benefit, net benefit, than this tree is ultimately. So just a basic guideline. Gross primary productivity is what we're talking about. Photosynthesis, it's a fixation of carbon, of atmospheric carbon. Water plus carbon dioxide plus light energy equals carbohydrates plus oxygen. That is what trees do. Through photosynthesis, they fix carbon, water, and light energy and churn out carbohydrates and oxygen. And I'll just skim over this. Net ecosystem production is the amount of carbon gain in the ecosystem. So that's the net primary productivity minus all the stuff that comes out of humans, animal breath, and flatulence, if you want to call it that. And you wind up with this scene again. All right, some fixed carbon is used for respiration. Again, that is the definition that I went over. Carbohydrates, sugars, used for plant maintenance and growth. That's what makes trees grow, the carbohydrates and sugars. So the net primary productivity is the gross minus this maintenance and growth needed for existence. All right, so you've got the diagram again. So you've got this tree taking in carbon, making use of it, and then there's a smaller amount that goes off through the atmosphere. You've got these peat bogs, that biological activity, taking in carbon, and then a certain amount goes off in the atmosphere. Meanwhile, you've got through this process with the tree, you've got a lot that's tied up in the roots in that system through that primary activity. And you've also got the litter that falls around the tree that also decomposes and becomes part of the soil. So a certain amount of carbon is captured there. Also, with trees that go to the mill, turned into products, ultimately chairs, desk furniture, buildings, and those are the that ties in with the prior presentation where U.S. Green Building, the leads basically is geared towards using wood products to sequester carbon, to lock that carbon up into products for 60 to 80 years on average in houses and buildings and the like. All right, so how do we make this fly in the marketplace? Implementation of cap and trade. It already exists in California. What we need is a national program, which we got close to in the 2009, 2010 era, but was somehow politically not palatable enough for enough people. So they killed it. Well, it's back and it's still here. There's still a need and we can take advantage of it. So you use the market, and it's basically, if any of you read the Pardoner's Tale, and that may be an obscure reference, but essentially what you're doing is you're paying for the sins. The sins in this case are bad things, emitting carbon. So in order to absolve those sins, you need credits or allowances and 1 ton of carbon. So you basically buy those carbon credits that are generated by people on farms or people who grow trees. So that's it in a nutshell. All right, the state needs, we want to improve returns to forest landowners, those people who grow trees that capture a lot of the carbon, maintain a productive land base, because we all need food and fiber, encourage sustainable development, a tie-in to the prior. What can a university do? What can individuals do? What can companies do? This all ties in. And encourage private land stewardship. Essentially keep forests in forests, incentives that reflect true economic, ecological, and social value. Is carbon part of the solution? I say yes. Many people agree. Forests contain about 40% of the total terrestrial carbon, as we've said before. So that, in a nutshell, is how we can use one tool in the toolbox or one solution in the basket of solutions to slow the rate of change or the increase in carbon in the atmosphere, which is contributing to any number of things. The craziness as far as the temperature, wild swings, the intensity of storms, and the threats to our food supply, ultimately, because a simple increase 2 degrees in temperature, in average temperature, you unleash some really pretty bad things. And we've already, there are certain pathogens and pests that are released because they can survive in a narrow band, and you increase that temperature and they're unleashed on the public. And we've already seen what a pandemic can do. God forbid, some impacts or major impacts on the food supply. So I won't go into this. I'll just click over and let's click down to what's going on in Tennessee real quick. The Tennessee Division of Forestry, TDEC, and some others have a project that I'd refer to as the it's like what was going on at Oak Ridge when they were developing the bomb. It's secret and it's big, and hopefully it'll be unveiled soon. And it's from what I've heard, will shower a lot of benefits, positive benefits, and all of us working together, we can make a difference and ultimately stop the increase in the rate of change. So that's all I've got today. Wanted to end quickly and not go over, and I'll turn it over to the next speaker. And thanks for the opportunity.
John, thank you so much. I think it's really important that we do think about forestry because Tennessee still has a good number of forests. It's definitely an area we can focus on. So next, I'm going to introduce Oscar Fox. And we're going to kind of run the next 2 sessions like a panel, sort of Q&A. And so I want to first give you a little more background on Oscar through the questions I'm going to ask him. So Oscar, when I first met you on the phone, you shared with me sort of your trajectory from, into sort of a climate leadership space in the city. So will you talk a little bit about your earliest sort of experiences being interested in climate change and then the work you initiated in the city around leadership, especially with the Mayor's Sustainability Council?
All right, well, thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here. I first started out in 8th grade and at University School of Nashville, where I go. In 8th grade, we have a change project where you're supposed to, show a change that you'd like to see around campus. And I think I was interested in maybe the Gardens of Babylon or something, but I decided that I wanted to get a green roof on campus. And so I learned a lot, and I tried to make as compelling a case as I could. It was a great, activity there. And then for the next 4 years, I tried to make it actually happen. And that just kind of set me off on a lot of different things. I think I met Mr. Kopstain at like the first Building and Grounds Committee meeting, where I presented pretty nervously my proposal to put a green roof on campus. And since then, now we have 7 planter boxes on the roof of University School of Nashville, and it's a native Tennessee pollinator garden. And since then, I've to accompany the green roof, we decided we want it to be a curricular tie-in, and so I've helped make curriculum surrounding the green roof, and so I've made some worksheets. And one of the coolest things ever was seeing 5th graders actually do some of the curriculum that I made. That I created a worksheet about the engineering design process and how green roofs are kind of case studies in that. So that's really what set me off on my interest in kind of sustainability at large.
Oscar, I love, because I feel like when we talked as well, you kind of, you sort of, you speak about it like it was so easy, and maybe it was, but will you share a little bit how you how you approached your school administration and sort of that process, so the youth that are watching can kind of learn about that? Because that took a lot of courage. Yeah.
Of course. Well, the year after I did the change project, I walked into my principal's office. That's Dr. Vince Dernan. I think he's on the call right now. And I just asked, I said, hey, what needs to happen here? I'm new to this. How can we make this happen? And he gave me a good, good list of steps. I talked to the head of the building and grounds at University School of Nashville, and since then, that's been a great relationship where we've learned. He's really helped us just kind of get a foothold, and so I've learned so many things. And I think it was an interesting kind of awkward process at the beginning, where it's like, how do you really interact with adults in a kind of in this setting? And I learned how to write a memo and write my emails professionally, and so I think it's been a really cool learning process. And I like to joke that I've learned kind of more life skills of adulthood and other things through that project, really, than just like you could ever learn in a classroom. And I think I actually also created at USN we can make an independent study, which is you can have, if you have a free period, you can teach yourself something, and you can get graded on something that isn't typical classroom topic. And so my independent study was about green roofs and about sustainable architecture and design. So that's just been a really, really interesting way to have the curricular approach these environmental issues from a curricular lens, and think, how can I not only learn more about this subject, but also take that learning and make it practical.
Oscar, thank you for that. I think another thing I would love to hear you share with the people participating is, we mentioned when we met over the phone, your involvement in the Mayor Sustainability Council, and I was really impressed with the way, with just the leadership role you took there. So will you share a little bit about that process? What made you want to participate? How you made the call? So that, because I think it also relates more broadly to policy, right? Because a lot of this call, we should talk about policy solutions. And for people that aren't in the policy world, how do you get into that world? And I think you're a great example of that. Will you share that with us?
Well, thank you. Yes. So it was the summer before, it was last summer, actually, at the beginning. And when Mayor Cooper announced the Sustainability Advisory Committee, and I figured, okay, I'm on the Mayor's Youth Council. I had done that since my freshman year of high school, sophomore year of high school. And, I think I'm interested in that. And I think a youth perspective on the board would be really interesting. And so I emailed Mr. Kopstain and Linda Bregan to see if student voice could be on it. And I think, and yes, was the long answer. And so since then I helped write I wrote a page of the climate action plan, of the report on the climate action plan to the mayor. And I collected a bunch of my friends who were interested in sustainability, and I got a really cool, diverse group, and we all had different strengths and different interests in sustainability. And so we made this really pretty awesome page about youth environmental concerns and the optimism that I think is necessary in these conversations. And so that was one of the aspects of that was really interesting.
That's fantastic.
Carol, can I jump in for just 2 seconds? Do you mind? So, just a couple of things in reaction to Oscar. Oscar, you're a fantastic leader, and I have so much respect for you. I do remember the day that you presented the Green Roof Project to the Buildings and Grounds Committee. You didn't come across as nervous at all. You came across as extraordinarily well-versed and confident, which you are. And I will tell you, when you reached out to Linda and I about participating in the Mayor's Sustainability Advisory Council, that I was so glad to hear from you. And we had so much fun. It was actually joyful working with you and your group. You brought a diversity of perspectives to this. You did excellent work. And just to underscore a point made in kind of that preamble video, it is you, Oscar, and your student colleagues, Nia and Naomi, and others, these plans that we all have, whether it's 2030, 2050, this is a multi-generational effort that we have to undertake. We are all long-term stewards, and your involvement and your continued action means so much. And it's been such a pleasure to work with you. I just had to say that. It's great to see you again.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And I think for me too, it's really empowering for adults that maybe don't know how to get involved. And we've got to, we got these youth mentors for us to kind of show us. I wanted you also to share a little bit about, you participated recently in the Cumberland River Compact Climate Summit, right? Which when I was preparing for this conference, I came across that and I was kind of like, oh, we should just let those kids run this conference, because it sounded like the outcomes were really the same. So could you share a little bit about your involvement with that, what that experience was like, and then what some of the solutions were that you all came up with at the summit?
Of course, that has been such a cool, I'm really, really happy to have been a part of that. I see, the Catherine and Morgan are on the call right here, so hello. But so that started, Catherine came to a Mayor's Youth Council meeting, and she introduced the, this idea of a youth climate summit, and she wanted to get youth involvement in actually planning it. And so that's the role that I've had there with a bunch of friends, really. And so we had a great time planning that. We invited really interesting people to come speak, and we planned really interesting activities. And that was last year. That was the first year. And then this year, in the world of COVID, we did it on Zoom, and I think it was a really great, enriching experience, even over Zoom. And I think it was really kind of enriching. And so I think that's one of the ways that I think adult and youth kind of cooperation is maybe the most prevalent there. I think it helped a ton. I know that I learned so much, and I think that's part of the Make Climate a Class. Like we had a youth climate summit, and the first thing was, what is climate change? How does it work? What really are the anthropogenic factors? What are other factors? And so I think that was really one of the most important things. It kind of empowered us to really understand, these are the specificities. And I think that's one of the coolest things, like, being treated as an adult and on the same respect given to anybody else. And I think that's one of the coolest parts of it.
Yeah, if you had a message to share with other youth who are maybe interested in this issue but don't know where to start, what are some tips that you would give them?
I think my biggest piece of advice is to find one project. Find something that's just maybe a little bit off, or something that you think would be super cool to have, and just make it your mission. That's what I did at university school. My green roof was just, I'm like the green roof kid, I guess. And I think I learned just so many things. It was really like a curriculum for adulthood. It set me off on so many different things. And I think when people see that you're hyper focused and interested in something, they want to be on your team, and you can learn and be friends with people and make awesome connections. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would recommend. Just find something that you want to fix, and just kind of play it out. Go through the machine of bureaucracy and learn how that works, because that's important. And I think that's my biggest piece of advice. And keep your head up at all times.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. And we will have time soon. I'm sure you'll have questions for Oscar. Last but not least, we have our headliners today. Nia and Naomi Groves are with Imani Montessori, and they are both in upper elementary. I thought one was in lower, but they're growing up before my eyes. So are you ladies ready? We would love to hear from you about the solutions that you came up with that children and adults can do, even without their parents' permission, right? To impact climate in our communities. You gotta unmute yourselves.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll. And today what we are going to be talking about is the 5 action steps that kids can take to stabilize climate change. So the first one is zero waste, which can be reusable, using reusable bottles, reusable straws, bags. You can compost what you eat and stuff like that. And you can try not to buy things with a lot of plastic packaging on them or that are not biodegradable.
And then the second one is others, which means get others involved, which means you could do challenges with other people and talk to them and do projects.
And the third is nature, which you can like plant a seed, you can plant out a garden, you can plant a tree, you can do like flowers that help the bees and and clean up trash on the ground.
And then the fourth one is energy conservation, which means you could turn off lights that you're not using, walk or ride a bike to school instead of using the car that emits greenhouse gases. You could use LEDs, you can unplug chargers and Alexas that you're not using, and then you could ask for energy efficient light bulbs.
And for the last one, which is diet, which you can try and cut out meat, or you cannot buy a bunch of food that you're gonna not really eat. You can eat local to keep your food from getting imported, and you can meal plan so you don't waste food.
And then to remember all of the steps, the acronym is ZONED. Z stands for zero waste, O stands for others, N stands for nature, E stands for energy conservation, and D stands for diet.
Ladies, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for that. You all need your own website. I feel like. Nia and Naomi, if you all were going to share with your classmates and your friends your age, steps that they can just to start to get involved, like even the very first steps to initiate those projects, what would you tell them to do?
We would be like, we can plan out a garden, we can plan out like challenges that we're gonna do and other things like that. And yeah, or like try and not waste stuff, or like wasting food, or yeah.
And then when you talk to your friends, you guys ever talk to your friends about climate issues? You think it's important?
Yeah, it's kind of scary a little bit, but yeah.
Okay. Do you guys want to share your research team? Let us see your research team.
Yes.
We had a team of researchers at Imani Montessori helping us with this.
This is Josny, this is Ava, and this is Zoe.
Hey Zoe, hey Jasmine, hey Ava. Thank you all so much. That was fantastic and spectacular. Thank you to all the speakers. And I want to now open up the question. You can type your questions in the chat box and then I will moderate and ask the questions. We have a question, I believe this is for Eric. Is there any active relationship between VUMC and VU sustainability efforts?
I think that's from Dr. Basinger. Hello. To be totally frank, not as much as I would like. I will say a couple of things. I do actively dialogue about our efforts at Vanderbilt and encourage VUMC in all cases to consider similar approaches. And I often dialogue about these things with, counterparts at the medical center. I have been in a lot of discussion with the medical center about the innovative approach that I described earlier in my slides about partnering with TVA and NES to create large-scale renewable energy. That's a real opportunity for the medical center, in my strong opinion. And I was recently reached out to by my old Vanderbilt Leadership Academy colleague, Dr. Reed Omery, who I've known for years. And I think at the VUMC rounds, sustainability is going to become a central topic. And I believe I'll be joining one of those dialogues. And that could be another moment to better define and find points of connection between our institutional efforts in this regard. So I think we're in many ways just getting started, but there are a lot of, I think, great prospects on the horizon.
That's great. Also, I think this is for John, also from Dr. Basinger. You mentioned cap and trade. Wouldn't a carbon price and dividend rebate to everyone be a better way? Cap and trade seems more able to be manipulated by the political process.
Yeah, so I've actually been in there are a couple people over in the business school who get really animated when we talk about this. Essentially, the bottom line is the price on carbon, and I think it's not an either or. I think there's a cap and trade, a place for cap and trade, and also carbon tax. Those two in concert can complement each other and help move us in a direction towards creating an awareness and behavior change, which is the other part of all these presentations. Behavior change through the market. People like to say, ultimately, people vote with their pocketbooks, they make decisions, and through a market-based system, you put a price on carbon, and then you lower or you change the behavior towards a more sustainable one. People become more conscious of what they're doing through that system. And then a straight carbon tax, just it's like the ruler slapping a hand slapping you on the hand, and making it expensive to behave in the way that we're currently behaving. So those are two behavior change models that can complement each other, and it's not an either or, in my opinion.
Thank you, John. This question is for Nia and Naomi. What do you think is the easiest step for a kid to do to stabilize the climate?
I think that it's to talk to others about climate change, because you just have to talk to people. It's not super hard, but it is a little difficult if you're nervous.
Which people should they start with? You think their parents?
Maybe like their friends or their family. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. That's a great answer. I have a question for Eric, actually, if that's okay. So I was thinking as you were speaking, and also as Oscar was speaking, and also Nia and Naomi, I was thinking back to your presentation. And I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about how important student leadership was into pushing sort of the changes at VU.
Oh, it's really, really important. It's interesting. One of the things that I think really got some of my colleagues' attention here was when maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I showed some data on student preferences when picking colleges from, like, say 15 years ago based on the Princeton Review, and then today. And students really look at institutions' track records on sustainability and their commitment to the environment. It is a differentiating thing, and that is true for the students at Vanderbilt. So we have a student body that is very proactive and very engaged in these issues. And there are a bunch of different mechanisms through which we engage with the students. There's a group called SPEAR, which is one of the leading kind of environmentalist organizations on the campus. Myself and my colleagues meet with SPEAR at least monthly. Our Vanderbilt student government has an environmental affairs committee. I have a university-wide sustainability advisory committee to which any student is welcome to come and attend. We've created what we call a student kind of ambassador program, where students who are interested in sustainability in the environment can go through some training through our Sustainability and Environmental Management Office, and then they become sort of part of our program, and we ask them to essentially extend the reach of the administration. And I think that, one of the things that I always try to demonstrate to the students is our own commitment to these topics, which is very genuine and very, very real. And I think sometimes students see administrators as these mysterious bureaucrats, and they don't really know what they do or how they do it, and that we always have some ulterior motive, and that is not true. And so I think that interaction is really, really key. And I'll also tell you, I've had moments, another way that we interact with the students is we have so many campus projects going on that we actively engage with our faculty to identify immersion opportunities. So just quickly, one, I think, powerful example of that is there's a section of the campus called Fleming Yard. I won't get into the whole history, but it was a highly underutilized space near one of our busiest areas of human turbulence. And I kept walking by it, getting frustrated, thinking we could do so much more with this space. So working with one of our faculty, she developed an immersion class in environmental design, and a number of seniors in environmental sciences did a semester-long project to design a sustainable new Fleming Yard. And I went to their final presentations and I was so blown away by it that I asked them, what are you doing tomorrow? Can you come and present this to some of our architects And it was so impressive, in fact, that we implemented it, and it's become not only a great symbol of sustainability, but it's a gathering place. It's a place that reflects our values, where people can have chance encounters, they can have communication and opportunities to interact with each other. And so that, we're constantly, long story short, we are constantly trying to harvest just the feedback and the input of our students. And in many ways, I feel like as an administrator, I'm sprinting to keep up with our students. They're just so very talented.
They're pushing us. The youth are pushing us. They always do. So just, I want to kind of recap for all of you. I'm looking for questions. If anybody else has questions, please send them through the chat. But if you can share like one of the biggest barriers that you see or that you faced in implementing your changes, or that you could see in implementing some of the changes that you suggested. And then let us know how it was overcome. I'll start with you, Eric.
Okay, obstacles to implementing changes. I think one of the good things is that there's been, Vanderbilt's culture is one of really collegiality and commitment. And there's far fewer degrees of separation between our administration, our faculty, our staff, and our students that you see at a lot of other organizations. And I think that is part of the Nashville culture. I think it's part of having a compact campus where you have all the schools within close geographic proximity. And I think people self-select to be at a place that's collaborative and where people pull in the same direction without a lot of ego. I think that recipe, which it's hard to know some of the secret ingredients in it, but it's real, that makes us more able to make progress. And we've always had leaders at the very top, including our now Chancellor Emeritus Nick Zeppos, who have been supportive of these objectives, a board of trust who's supportive. Our new Chancellor, Daniel Diermeyer, is intensely interested in these topics. We have a faculty that's interested. So we have all the right ingredients. And I think there haven't been too many obstacles. I mean, when I first arrived here, which was in 2012, I remember talking to our now again Chancellor Emeritus Nick Zeppos, and I said, it's sort of unfortunate that the most visible landmark on our entire campus is a 300-foot high coal stack, right in the middle of campus. May I ask humbly, what's up with that? And so over the course of the next year or so, through some of our administrative processes, we came up with a plan to, if you will, decommission that. And that was a big, bold step. And that was, we had been doing other things, but we just really have a strong momentum here. And I think our goal is to go from being, a local leader to a regional leader to truly a national leader. And I think it's our responsibility as stewards of the institution to pull in the right direction. That's why we're here. And I think, I'm not a great expert on any of these topics per se. I've learned a lot, but I mean, my major objective is to remove obstacles and help do the right thing.
That's great. Thank you, Eric. John, what barriers do you see for some of the solutions that you shared?
The primary one right now is political will. There's a groundswell from people in school, from elementary school all the way up through college, that I've seen over the past 15 years. But when they move through the system and they graduate and then they become somewhat active, and then that wanes and it tends to fall away. Again, primarily where they can make the most impact is through what Nia and Naomi cited, is talking to your friends and families first, and then outwardly voting, making sure the people you vote for have the same ideals and respect for science, and have a concept that we're all in this together, and that it's not one silver bullet that's going to do it. It's all rowing in the same direction. Ultimately, that'll get us out of this mess. And so again, political will would be my primary thing, because I've seen it on the verge of having a carbon tax as an example, and cap and trade, and that just being shot down by people who refuse to invest in the future and see the future, and who have a care and concern for future generations. And that's my bottom line. And I think that's represented well here today. And I think that is the vehicle for overcoming and getting our arms around ultimately this problem.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. Oscar, what sorts of barriers did you face and how did you overcome them?
I think that the biggest barrier I faced is time. I have 4 years as a high school student and, had a lot of things I wanted to do. And, I think it really does come down to time. And I think oftentimes things aren't perfect at certain moments and you have to be patient, but also you have to kind of keep your foot on the gas. And so I think that's one thing, like if you don't keep pushing, there's no need to do it. And so I think that's, I guess, my biggest piece of advice there too, is that, keep your foot on the gas and keep pestering, send as many emails as you want. I think it can be, I think that's the hardest thing that I faced. I think I had a shockingly little pushback, where it's a pretty unique experience, I think. And so I'm very, very grateful for that. But I think, in that world, I think that the hardest thing I really came across was the timing aspect of it, where you're only somebody who doesn't need to get a job for so long. And I think that's the hardest thing, I think.
That's right. I like that what you said, you're only someone who doesn't need to get a job for so long. It's true. Thank you for that, Oscar. And we have a challenge, or we have a question in the chat for Nia and Naomi. They're asking, can you two suggest a challenge that friends could do with each other?
Maybe like for a whole month, whoever can waste less stuff, or whoever can walk or ride a bike everywhere they go for a whole month.
Or someone could be vegetarian for a week or a month or 2 months or something like that.
That's great. I think we're going to put that as one of our top 3 solutions for the webinar, is we're going to challenge all the participants to one of those 3 things. Thank you all for that. I'm just going to look in the chat if there's any more questions. So there wasn't a question, but Catherine Price wants to share that the Cumberland River Compact's Youth Climate Program is hosting casual climate conversations open to youth in Tennessee. It's a chance to connect with like-minded youth, and their first program is tonight. I don't know how I can share that. Sarah, if you're on, if you can help me share that website in the chat. And does anyone else have any questions they want to ask of the panelists?
Yeah, I've got a quick question about that. What's the content? Because I've got some young people who are in elementary school who might want to look at that. And
Sarah, just put it in the chat, I think, so you can access it there. It looks great. Right. I also want to give a plug for Imani Montessori, where the girls are in school. As they were talking and we were talking about this issue, I was thinking that Imani School is a great model for the education that needs to happen. So it's very, and Imani, you can speak to it if you feel like it, but you don't have to. It's integrative education. So it's a Montessori school, so the kids get to run projects. Will you share just a little bit about your school?
Hi, I wasn't muted, sorry. Sure, I would love to.
So can you just share about the model, how integrative the model is?
So we are a tutorial, we're a homeschool tutorial, which means that we support homeschooling families. This was really important during the last year that we had with the pandemic. So many schools were closed, and I was really an advocate for pod learning, which is close community families or groups of children who make a commitment to quarantine together and educate together, but also integrating outdoor learning, alternative learning options, maybe not being in school all day long, maybe doing 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening, but just really being more flexible and open to other methods of educating our children.
Thank you so much for that. I think you brought it exactly to the right time. Thank you so much. Imani, thank you all to the panelists. We had a great discussion today. We're gonna now we're gonna report out the 3 top things that came out of this discussion, the top solutions put them to the website. So I believe the link you use to register, you'll be able to also download and watch the webinar after today. Please feel free to share it with your friends. And thank you all for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.